Urgent no-fly zone warning as Chinese warships lurk offshore. International flights are being diverted due to potentially hazardous airspace between Australia and New Zealand after Chinese warships reportedly conducted live-fire exercises. 3 Chinese warships are reportedly running military exercises just 150 nautical miles (277 kilometers) east of Sydney. Commercial airline pilots flying over the Tasman Sea were warned by Air Services Australia on Friday, according to the ABC. An Emirates flight from Sydney to Christchurch was directly warned by Chinese military to avoid the airspace about 11 a.m. The Australian Financial Review reported that pilots were claiming to be harassed by the Chinese. The warnings remain in place and airlines such as Qantas and Air New Zealand are diverting flights. The Australian Navy has deployed 2 vessels to shadow the Chinese Naval Task Group, which consists of a frigate, a cruiser, and a supply ship. It's the furthest south Beijing's Navy has ventured along Australia's eastern coastline. Foreign Minister Penny Wong said the situation was being looked at closely. This is a Chinese task group that the Deputy Prime Minister, Richard Marles, has previously spoken about, and we are monitoring this task group very closely. It is, as I understand it, operating in international waters, Ms. Wong said. We will be discussing this with the Chinese, and we already have at official level in relation to the notice given and the transparency provided in relation to these exercises, particularly the live-fire exercises. Australian authorities told the ABC that advice had been issued to air traffic controllers, which provoked several international flights to sidetrack off course. Air Services Australia, which is responsible for aviation safety within the region, has referred all questions to the Department of Defence. Ms. Wong said it was a typical Australian government response. Obviously, this is an evolving situation, but it would be normal practice where a task group is engaging in exercises for there to be advice given to vessels and aircraft in the area, and Air Services Australia is doing what it should do, which is to give that advice, Ms. Wong said. Countries, including Australia and others, can conduct military exercises in international waters. The advice to me is this is what China is doing. When they conduct those exercises, obviously, notice is provided to ensure that is available to anyone in the area, and that is what Air Services Australia is doing. On Thursday, Defence Minister Richard Marles said Australian ships and aircraft were working with New Zealand's military to keep an eye on a Chinese naval task force. The Defence Department first revealed the Chinese Navy was being watched in the Coral Sea, northeast of Queensland, but within Australia's exclusive economic zone. Defence said the Chinese vessels were the Jiangqi-class frigate Hangyang, the Renhai-class cruiser Junyi, and the Fuchi-class replenishment vessel Weishenhu. Asked if she would press the foreign minister and Chinese officials to be more transparent about what the Naval Task Force was doing and also where it is going, Ms. Wong said. What I would say is that China is operating in international waters just as Australia and other countries operate in international waters. We always express that all countries should comply with the law of the sea, and that is what we will always be articulating to China, Ms. Wong said. As the foreign minister, what I need to articulate is Australia's interests are in transparency and the observance of international law. Defence Minister of New Zealand, Judith Collins, said it was a wake-up call for her country and should remind citizens their geographical isolation no longer offered protection. Ms. Wong said it wasn't clear how long flights would be diverted for, and was ultimately a matter for government services to determine.